How's it going, everybody? My name is Ben from the Ben and Bev channel. Today we're going to be talking about the first big horror film of 2022.
X.
X is a new take on the slasher genre, diving deep into the tropes of the 80s with really drastic color changes and absolutely insane, gory, and psychedelic effects at points. The movie kicks off in Texas, where a group of adult film stars are trying to get a film made with this avant-garde director and his girlfriend, and have to plan their way around the law in 1979 to get this movie filmed. They find themselves renting out a small barn from an elderly couple who lives next door, and they're trying to do it all under his nose, with quite a few cast members as well as a load of equipment. Now, the group themselves really is the core of the movie, led by the producer of the film, Wayne, who's played by Martin Henderson, but if you hear just the audio, it really just sounds like Matthew McConaughey, and he must have done some workouts to get ready for this movie, because the dude has an 8-pack, and
must have put in his contract somewhere that he had to walk around in his tighty whities for the last half of the movie for some reason.
him and his girlfriend Maxine are the main power dynamic that drives the group forward, and though the other characters like Bobby Lee and Jackson Hole, as well as Lorraine and RJ, the filmmaking group, have pretty substantial roles in the films, it's really Mia Goth's Maxine that pushes the whole story forward in her relationship with Wayne. Mia Goth is someone I haven't actually been familiar with before, but she absolutely killed it in this movie from the very beginning. That opening shot where she's
doing a line of coke in the nightclub. I mean, just the way the camera angle jumps into it. You're literally following her doing the line, and then it like zooms up to her face. Really
into that crazy zoom-in style that old school horror movies like Suspiria use. Maxine is a character full of grand ambitions who's really willing to do whatever it takes, sleep with whoever, and do whatever to get those goals. She really is the one who pushes this whole movie forward, and not just the movie that we're watching, but the movie that they're trying to get made. This adult film that they're making, she's the one who kind of pushes the status quo. She's also the first character to interact with the old folks besides Wayne when he actually gets the room. Old woman sees her, she's taking a break from one of the scenes, wandering the property, and she kind of watches her as she gets undressed and goes in the swamp. There's a really weird scene with the crocodile and a lot of really crazy imagery that gets brought up that connects the two, and I don't want to give too much into the old couple's past, but there's a lot of key details that kind of tie her to Maxine. She balances both serious, comedic, and dramatic elements of the script perfectly. There's a really driving presence, and her ego is palpable in this character. You really feel like Maxine really is that mean girl who's going to make it to the top. I mean, we have Bobby Lee, who's a pretty loud and abrasive character, who's kind of the lead actress in the adult film with Kid Cudi's Jackson Hole, and though they're both their own presence, doesn't really command the camera nearly as much as Maxine does in this movie. Despite all the actors having their own serious presence, the dynamic between all of them is interesting because they all have very different backgrounds in their lives, and though you don't dive too in-depth to them as it's not the key point of the movie, the differences between Lorraine and RJ and their film background, and Wayne and Bobby Lee and Jackson with their dirty movie background, is a pretty big contrast. RJ, the director, constantly the whole film is talking about how he wants to
make it artsy and how he wants to make it avant-garde, how it doesn't just have to be a smut film.
Happening in the midway point of the movie that they're making, so it's a very stressful moment, and it's a really nice set of drama before this movie goes into full slasher overdrive, and that is the main part of the movie. So if you're someone who's
not a big fan of seeing a bunch of sex scenes in a film, this is definitely not going to be the one for you, as the first half of the movie
interplays the dramatic discourse between the members of the crew with scenes actually from the movie that they're filming. So there's
loads of sex scenes.
And being as I was seeing this movie on a Saturday night, there was a bunch of kids that snuck in that were sitting in the row behind me that were making jokes the whole time.
Definitely landed a little differently with a captive audience.
As abrasive as a lot of the content in this movie could be to the average eye, I think the director did a great job of incorporating it all into that late 70s, early 80s horror movie feel. The pulpiness of the movie, the jokes, all of that lands perfectly with this intense, atmospheric, and times anxious tone. Well, the sense of dread and terror, including the jump scares and little placements of violin as well as in the soundtrack, are crazy the whole movie. Scenes where people are getting just butchered by knives or eye pokes or whatever. You think they're going to pull away, but no, the camera just zooms in on it and you're just bathed in the gore. A lot of times the colors change in the background as well, so you have this very psychedelic, dreamlike effect as a character is getting murdered. Usually to a pretty kickin' 70s song. The Don't Fear the Reaper placement was actually really phenomenal as well. And though a lot of the stuff in this movie has been done before, I think just the overall stylistic drive and concise attention to those really crazy zooming in camera angles really draws you into the film. The actors are great, the soundtrack's phenomenal, and even though the movie is intentionally over the top at times, I think they did a great job of somehow reinventing that slasher genre in the year of 2022, and somehow they did it with a period piece set in the debut time period of when slashers first started coming out. X is a unique and extremely inventive horror movie that doesn't shy away from the violent sex or anything that makes it rated R. In fact, it dives into those things headfirst to the point where it's nearly pulpy, but manages to keep the seriousness and the sense of terror and dread up enough that you don't ever get brought out of that state of unease that the movie sets up. Even when you're in these moments of passion or of humor, there is still that threat lying underneath, and
the attention to detail with the camera angles is insane.
Some of these scenes, you're thousands of feet out from the character or the event that you're seeing, and then the camera just slowly pans into them Simon Gain's focus, it really draws you into the movie and you feel like you're on the back of a creature about to murder these main characters. The way everything is filmed, combined with the score and the soundtrack, from beginning to end, the movie is just a thrill for a horror fan. And a really great callback to nostalgia without diving too much into it. The point that the movie would become a joke or something other than a horror movie.
Like Cabin in the Woods.
It's also another example of A24 once again proving that if it's a horror movie they're releasing, it's probably going to be up to snuff and worth seeing. I mean, I can't think of a time where an A24 movie didn't at least intrigue me when I saw it in cinemas. And
a lot of them coming out this year. I'm really excited.
I also forgot to mention there is an after credits scene that kind of sets this movie up for a sequel. There's a really big plot twist about the central plot with our main character Maxine. I don't want to go too far into it, but it's a pretty big plot twist when you get to the end of the movie. That after credits scene also is definitely worth sticking around for, as it hints at the future insanity that Ty West is going to be bringing us in this universe. My rating for A24's newest horror film, X, is an 8.7 out of 10. Have you guys seen the salacious new take on the slasher genre? Let us know in the comments below. We'll see you guys next time. Ben and Bev, out.